So I decided to make Ukrainian vareniki from scratch. You know, those little potato dumplings that look so innocent and delicious? Yeah, those ones. And before you ask, yes, I'm Ukrainian. No, my grandmother never made them. I just saw a video online and thought, how hard could it be? It's flour, water, and potatoes. I've eaten potatoes my whole life. I've seen flour before. Water? I'm basically an expert. Famous last words, right? Here's the thing about traditional recipes. They always make it sound so simple. Mix flour and water, make circles, add filling, pinch edges, boil, done. What they don't tell you is that between step 1 and step 2, you'll question every life choice that led you to this exact moment, standing in your kitchen covered in what can only be described as paste. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you on this journey. Buckle up. I started with the dough because that seemed like the logical place to begin. The recipe said to mix flour, egg, water, and a pinch of salt. Easy. Except nothing about this was easy. First attempt, I added the water. Too much water. The dough was basically soup. It looked like someone had already eaten the varenyky and, well, you know, so I added more flour. Now it's too dry. It's cracking like the Sahara Desert. So I added more water. Too wet again. More flour. Too dry. At this point, I'm just having a conversation with this dough like we're in couples therapy. And can we talk about the stickiness? This dough stuck to everything. My hands, the counter, my phone screen because I tried to scroll through the recipe with dough hands. My cat who made the mistake of walking through the kitchen. Everything. I looked like I was growing flour mittens. The recipe said to knead it for 10 minutes until smooth. Smooth? This thing had the texture of spite and regret. Have you ever tried to knead dough that's simultaneously too sticky and too dry? It's like a magic trick, except instead of pulling a rabbit out of a hat, you're pulling despair out of a bowl. Eventually, and I mean 45 minutes later, I got something that vaguely resembled dough. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't elastic, but it existed. And at that point, that was enough. I let it rest under a kitchen towel, and honestly, we both needed that break. While the dough was resting and contemplating its life choices, I moved on to the filling. Potatoes. How hard could potatoes be? I've made mashed potatoes before. This is just mashed potatoes with attitude. I boiled the potatoes. That part actually went fine, which should have been my first warning that disaster was coming. Then I started mashing them. The recipe said they needed to be smooth, no lumps. Apparently, lumpy potatoes can create air pockets in the vareniki and make them burst while boiling. Great. So now I'm worried about potato-based explosions. I mashed those potatoes like my life depended on it. I mashed them like they owed me money. I mashed them until my arm hurt, and I started questioning whether I should just buy frozen vareniki like a normal person. Then came the onions. You're supposed to caramelize them. Do you know how long it takes to properly caramelize onions? Neither did I. The recipe said 20 minutes. It took 45. 45 minutes of standing over a pan, stirring onions, crying, not from emotion, but because onions are nature's tear gas, watching them slowly turn from white to translucent to golden brown. And then the cheese situation. The recipe called for farmer's cheese. Do you know what farmer's cheese is? I didn't. I went to 3 stores. 3. The first store clerk looked at me like I'd asked for unicorn tears. The second one directed me to the dairy aisle and left me there to fend for myself. The third one actually knew what it was, and it was right next to the cottage cheese the whole time. I mixed everything together. Potatoes, onions, cheese, salt, pepper. Tasted it. Not bad. Actually pretty good. For a brief moment, I thought maybe I could do this. Maybe I was actually capable of making vareniki. That confidence lasted approximately 30 seconds. Time to roll out the dough. The recipe said roll it thin, about 3 millimeters. How thin is 3 millimeters? I don't speak metric in my kitchen. I speak in units of pancakes and pizza crust. This needed to be thin but not too thin or it would tear. But not too thick or it would be chewy. I rolled it out. Cut circles with a glass because I don't own a biscuit cutter, and let's be honest, I probably never will. Now I have these little dough circles staring up at me, waiting to be filled. They looked so innocent, so full of potential. Here's where things got interesting. The instructions said to put a small amount of filling in the center, about a teaspoon. A teaspoon. Have you seen how tiny a teaspoon is? I'm making dumplings, not performing microsurgery. But fine. I added a teaspoon of filling to the first one. Then I tried to fold it. The recipe made it sound so simple. Fold the dough over and pinch the edges to seal. Except my edges didn't want to seal. They just kind of looked at each other awkwardly, like 2 people at a party who have nothing in common. I pressed them together. They came apart. I wet my fingers. Apparently moisture helps. And tried again. This time they stuck. But the dumpling looked like it had been in a fight and lost. The second one I made, I got greedy. Thought I'd add a little more filling. Just a bit more. Not too much. That varenik exploded the moment I tried to fold it. Potato filling everywhere. On my hands, on the counter, on my shirt somehow. It was like a tiny potato grenade. By the fifth varenik, I developed a system, sort of. They were sealed, technically. Were they pretty? Absolutely not. They looked like drunk origami. One side was always thicker than the other. Some were shaped like half moons, some looked like angry triangles, and one looked like my attempt at drawing a heart in second grade. I kept going, made about 20 of them, each one uglier than the last. They sat there on my flour-dusted cutting board, a collection of misshapen dough pockets that would have made any Ukrainian grandmother weep. Finally, the moment of truth, boiling them. The recipe said to bring a large pot of salted water to a boil, add the varenyky, and wait for them to float. When they float, they're done. Simple, right? I dropped the first batch in, about 6 of them because I didn't want to crowd the pot. Apparently, varenyky need personal space, which is fair because so do I. They sank to the bottom. I waited, and waited. Watching water boil is boring. Watching water boil with dumplings in it that may or may not be falling apart is terrifying. One started floating, then another, then, wait, where's the third one? I looked into the pot. One of them had burst open. My poorly sealed edges had betrayed me. There was potato filling floating in the water like a crime scene. The water looked like someone had made a very thin, very sad potato soup. The ones that survived looked okay. I scooped them out with a slotted spoon, being very gentle because at this point they were basically my children, and I'd put too much effort into them for them to fall apart now. I cooked the rest in batches, each time holding my breath. A few more casualties. One stuck to the bottom of the pot because I didn't stir them fast enough after adding them. One just disintegrated for reasons I still don't understand. Maybe it gave up, maybe it had weak edges, maybe it just didn't want to be a varenik anymore. By the end, I had 12 intact vareniki. 12 out of 20. That's a 60% success rate, which technically would be a failing grade in school. But in my kitchen that day, it felt like winning the lottery. Let me paint you a picture of my kitchen at this point. Flour everywhere. On the counter, on the floor, in my hair, probably in my lungs. Dishes piled in the sink because apparently making 20 dumplings requires every bowl, pot, and utensil you own. Potato peels scattered around like confetti from the world's saddest party. A kitchen towel that would never be the same color again. The recipe said this would take 2 hours. 2 hours. It took me 4.5. 4.5 hours to make 12 dumplings. That's 22.5 minutes per dumpling. I could have driven to a restaurant, ordered varenyky, driven home, and still had time left over. But then I tried one, just one, with butter and sour cream like the recipe suggested. And oh my God, it was good. Like, really good. Was it worth 4.5 hours of my life? The jury's still out on that one. But that bite, that first bite of something I made completely from scratch, that tasted like actual food and not disaster, that was something. The dough was tender, the filling was flavorful, and for a brief moment I understood why people do this. Why they spend hours making food by hand when frozen options exist. There's something about creating something with your own hands, even if those hands are covered in flour and your kitchen looks like a crime scene. Did I immediately want to make more? Absolutely not. Will I ever make varenyky again? Ask me in 6 months when I've forgotten the trauma. Do I have a newfound respect for anyone who makes these regularly? 100%. So that's the story of how I spent half a day making 12 Ukrainian dumplings. Would I recommend this experience? Only if you enjoy chaos, have questionable decision-making skills, and really, really like potatoes. But hey, if you decide to try making varenyky yourself, learn from my mistakes. Less water in the dough at first, don't overfill them, and maybe order pizza before you start, just in case. If you enjoyed this disaster of a cooking story, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to see more of my questionable life choices. And drop a comment below. Have you ever tried making something from scratch that turned into a complete mess? I want to hear about it. Misery loves company, and I definitely need the company after this. Thanks for watching, and remember, frozen dumplings exist for a reason. Don't forget to subscribe, and until next time.